Today we're going to discuss how to make sprouted sourdough Ezekiel bread without flour or yeast. Now, the Ezekiel bread you're familiar with, probably Food for Life or the recipes you find online. The bread is good, I like it, but they use yeast, or some recipes use flour. So I'm thinking there's got to be a recipe that uses no yeast and no flour, and I couldn't find any. So through experimentation, I found, I think, a very good recipe. So before we go into the ingredients, let's discuss the scriptures that talk about Ezekiel's diet. So go to Ezekiel 4:9, and let's read it together. Thou shalt also take unto thee wheat and barley and beans and lentils and millet and finches, and put them in one vessel, and make thee bread thereof. According to the number of days thou shalt lie upon thy side, 390 days shalt thou eat thereof. So if we look at the ingredient list, he starts out with wheat. So I start with mostly wheat. That's almost half the recipe. This is 2.5 cups of wheat. Now, some wheat sprouts and some doesn't. This is one that does, and I found that the lighter version that's more blonde doesn't sprout as well. So make sure you get a version that sprouts. The next ingredient on the list is barley. Now, barley, there's two different types you can buy. You can buy pearl or barley groat. The groat barley is bigger in size, and the pearl is smaller. And from a nutritional aspect, the barley groat is more nutritious, but I found it's harder to find. So this is 1 cup of barley. The next listed is beans. Now beans, you can use many different types, like black beans, pinto, navy beans, kidney beans. I've tried those, but I found that mung beans, which is right here, and chickpeas work the best. And you may be thinking, why am I picking this combination? Because chickpeas and mung beans sprout very well, and you can also eat them raw. So again, try different beans, but this is what I prefer. And together, this is 3/4 cup. So it's 3/8 of a cup each. All right, the next is lentils. Lentils, you can buy many different types as well. You can buy yellow, red, black, green, speckled, many different types. What I prefer is green and black, the combination of them. So this is 2/3 cup of black and green, so it's 1/3 cup of each of lentils. All right, next on the list is millet. Now millet is interesting. Millet I could only find, at least in Israel, as organic millet. So this is 5/8 of a cup. Very nutritious grain, but not as well known. And then last is finches. Now the translation for finches is spelt, rye, or buckwheat. Now the only translation that uses buckwheat is the Jewish Bible, but most translations say either rye or spelt. So I do a combination of 1/2 cup of rye and spelt, so it's 1/4 cup of each. Okay, and last is the salt. Now this isn't in the Ezekiel recipe, but it enhances the flavor. This is 1 tablespoon of salt. Okay, now if we go over his diet, let's read the next verse. And thou meat shalt thou also eat shall be by weight 20 shekels a day, from time to time shalt thou eat it. Now, how much was that exactly? Well, this is exactly what he ate per week. This is roughly 6 cups total, which makes about 60 ounces. And if you split that by 7, divided by 7, it's 8 ounces, or roughly 9. So when this is finished, it's 2 loaves of bread. So that's the amount Ezekiel could eat in 1 week, is just 2 loaves. Next verse, thou shalt drink also water by measure, the 6th part of a hin. From time to time shalt thou drink. What is that? Well, they say that's about 2/3 quart, or 3 cups of water. So he could only drink this amount of water per day. That was his limit, 3 cups a day of water. And then the last thing the Lord commanded him to do was the next verse, thou shalt eat it as barley cakes, and thou shalt bake it with dung that cometh out of man in their sight. Now Ezekiel protested with the Lord and said, I don't want to be defiled by man dung. So the Lord said, you can cook it with cow dung. Now if you study about dung, it cooks at a very high heat. So we cooked this recipe at 200 degrees Celsius, 400 Fahrenheit. So that's more heat than a typical bread recipe, but it's more moist than what you find in other breads. Ezekiel lived on this diet for 390 days. That's over a year. And if we look at the calorie intake, 8 ounces or 9 ounces a day is roughly 500 calories, give or take. So that's not much when they say we need 2,000 calories a day. So if Ezekiel lived on this diet, we certainly can. Okay, to begin the making of the Ezekiel bread, we're going to take first the barley and the millet that you see here. And we're going to put these two together and let it ferment in water. The reason we do these first is because these don't really sprout. You need a special type of barley to sprout, and it's very hard to get. Millet will sprout, but not many of the grains. So first thing, take a Dutch pan and put the millet and the barley in together. And then put water on top. Okay, we're just gonna let it, probably that was about 3 cups of water. And just set this aside. And the next part is the wheat. We're going to soak this. Now, when we're dealing with sprouting the wheat, we're not going to let it sprout for the full amount of time, just till it starts to form tails. The reason being is if you let it fully sprout, it won't form the wheat gluten that it needs. And then the bread will get all mushy. So you can either soak it in a jar container like this, or a plastic container. Presentation purposes, we're just going to get a smaller bowl. Set the wheat grain in there. And then take some water and soak this as well. The next thing we need to soak is the rest of the grains, lentils, and beans. So we're going to take the mung beans and the chickpeas that you see here. Put those in. Then the green and black lentils. And the spelt and rye. Just mix it together. And then add the water. Now this is going to expand the most, so you want to add a good amount of water here. That's good. And then push all the beans, lentils, grains down so they're submerged. Okay, so you're going to let the 3 mixtures soak for 8 to 12 hours. So depending how you do this in the evening or in the morning or even the afternoon, just make sure you keep track of the time. The grains are ready now to rinse and drain. If you look at them, notice they've expanded a lot from the water intake. So we're going to rinse all the mixtures and go from there. Okay, let's begin the process. These have been soaked for roughly 9 to 10 hours. So let's start with the wheat first. So we're going to drain it. You just need a lid and just drain the water out, like so. Just to get most of the water out. And then we're going to rinse it. Okay. Swish it around with your fingers. Make sure the water's cold as well. And drain what you can without the lid. Now if you have a jar or the plastic container, some of them come with holes to make it easier. It's not necessary. I don't use those, but it does make the process faster. Okay, so you want to get as much of the water out as you can. And some say to keep the lid on. Some put a cloth over the container. It really depends on the weather. If it's really hot and the water evaporates quickly, then I like to keep a lid over it. If it's more in the cold months, a cloth is better. It just depends how hot it is. Okay, that's good. So that's the wheat. You just want to kind of scrape the lid or anything just to get it all in the bowl or the container. And so that's it for the wheat. Now let's do the bean, lentil, and rye spelt mixture. Same process. So I'm just going to drain it. Now, if I made a mistake, I spilled some of it in the sink. That's fine, you can just put it back in because you're going to rinse it anyways. So just put the lid over it. Now, this water is coming out much more dirty because it's got black lentils in it, and that makes the water look much darker. That's normal. Okay, so I rinsed enough of it. Let's fill it. Stir it around. Drained it. Now I'm gonna put water in it again and drain it. Rinse it. Drain, rinse. Here we go. Okay, so let's drain it again. So you're going to do this twice a day, in the morning and at evening. And you're going to notice it's going to sprout more and more each day. So I find that for the mung beans and the chickpeas and everything else, it takes about 2 full days to do this. So the whole process of making the bread is about 3 days. But 2 full days. Okay, that's good. That's drained as well. Okay, the barley and the millet mixture, we're going to drain and rinse as well. Now this water looks really dirty because the barley just makes the water really dirty. It's the nature of barley. Look at it. We're going to pour water in it. Twist it around. You could rinse this a couple times. You want the water to turn out clear. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to rinse it once, but I'm going to fill it up pretty high the water. And that's good right now. Okay, so we're going to drain it. Here. Now the reason we put this in a Dutch pan instead of another container is because we're going to use a blender to blend it. And I like to use an immersion blender. You can also use a food processor, but I find with this stick blender, that's the other name for it, it's faster and there's a lot less cleanup, in my opinion. So you can try both ways. This is taking a while to drain because I put a lot of water in it. Okay. So this is the longest process of doing Ezekiel bread, is the draining process. Now again, if you have the special containers, it's a lot quicker, but most people don't have that, so here we go. Now it's starting to be finished once it's just single drops. Okay. I'm going to take some of the grains that go in the sink. Okay, now this is what it's going to look like. So we have to add some water to this before we blend it. So this is a 1 cup of water right here. And it says to do about 3/4 to 1 cup of water, so give or take. So, you know what, if I add the full cup, that's fine. I can always add less water to the other mixtures. So, I'm going to stick the blender in it now. And this is the whole reason why I prefer the Dutch pan, because when I use this, it creates quite a mess. Getting a big shot of this. We're gonna. Okay, I'm finding I'm gonna need to add just a little bit more water. So it's about a full cup now. And that should be good. So you want to do that for about a minute. Okay, that's what it's going to look like. You could go a little bit more than this if you wanted to, but when we add the wheat tomorrow, it'll be easier to blend. This is day 2 of making the Ezekiel bread. This has been sprouting for 12 hours now. If we look at the bean, lentil, and grain mixture, notice that the mung beans have already fully formed their tails. The other beans, lentils, and grains need more time. So let's look at the grain mixture with wheat. And if you look closely at it, you can start to see little white tails. They're barely visible, and that's what you want. Because if you fully sprout this, it will lose its gluten, and then the bread will be mushy. So that's why we barely sprout the wheat, because we need that gluten in for the bread to make a nice texture to it. And the barley and millet, if you open it now, it will start to bubble a little bit and have a nice scent. Alright, we're going to add the wheat berries to the barley and millet. So you just dump it in, like so. Make sure you get it all in there. Now we're going to add some water. So this is 2 cups. We may not add it all. We'll have to see the consistency. I'm going to add just about 1 cup right now. Okay. And we're going to get the blender here. Alright, that's good for now. And it's got a nice pancake kind of batter consistency is what you're shooting for. We're going to let this mixture sit for a whole 24 hours, so that will be day 3 for the bean, lentil, and the other grain mixture to be fully sprouted. And for this to ferment as well, it needs more fermentation with the wheat. So we're going to cover it and just let it sit at room temperature. We're going to rinse and drain the bean lentil grain mixture now. So make sure you use cold water. Fill it up. Swish it around. And then we're going to drain it. Now, I've done sprouting a lot, and I realize you don't always have to do the rinse and drain twice a day. Let's say you just can't because of time or something comes up. It's still fine if you just do it once a day. But if you're going to do that, make sure the lid is covered because you don't want it to dry out the mixture. So yeah, it's doable just once a day, but preferably do twice a day. It's better. Okay, there we go. This is day 3 of the Ezekiel bread. If I look at the sprouts now, they're fully sprouted. Especially the mung beans. The chickpeas could sprout a little bit more, but from experience, if chickpeas go past 2 days, they start to taste bitter. So this is at its prime, and it's going to be really delicious. You can eat it just like this, raw, and it's amazing as a salad. The grain mixture, the fermentation, now it's got like a purple hue to it, which is alright. It's got, if you mix it with a spoon now and smell it, it's really got that bubbles going on now. You can hear it and you smell it. It's got a nice sourdough smell to it now. Let's now add the sprouted mixture with the fermented grains. Just scoop it in. And this is why I try to use the biggest pan I can use so it doesn't go everywhere when I mix it up. Okay, there we go. A few more grains are still here. Alright. Now let's add some water. Let's see how it looks with two. This is 2 cups again. Let's do 1.5 cups. Okay. Start mixing it. As you're doing this, it really puts out a really good fragrance, like a garden smell, like, I don't know how to explain it, like freshly mowed grass. Just really nice smelling mixture. Okay, we are ready now to put the mixture into the loaf pans. This will make exactly 2 loaves. Make sure it's greased really well, loaf pans, otherwise the bread will stick. So I'm just going to start pouring it into the pan. Let's see how this goes. Okay, let's add to the other one. Okay, that one looks good. Let's put that one off to the side. Put some more here. I just like to use my hand, or you can use a rubber spatula. Get the rest of the mixture out. Okay, and then we'll pat it down. Now what I've done, I've tried this where I let it sit for a day or even 2 days to just see how the flavor changes, and it's really, really sour. So you can try it. I like it just let it rise for about 4 or 6 hours. I'm going to add some more here. This is to even it out. So 4 or 6 hours, just room temperature is fine. And then it's going to be ready to bake. And cover it, of course. I think it's about even now. The bread has been sitting for over 5 hours now, so let's uncover it. If you look at the bread, it's a little darker, but that's how it's going to look. So let's now get it ready to put in the oven. You'll now want to preheat the oven to either 200 degrees Celsius or 400 degrees Fahrenheit. The oven's been preheated for 10 minutes, and now we're going to put the bread in. And you're going to let it cook for 1 hour. This is what the bread looks like right out of the oven after 1 hour of baking. Now we're going to cut it and eat it and enjoy it. Alright, this is the finished product. Notice I cut up the Ezekiel bread and we're serving it with some wine and have some flowers with it. On the bottom of the one Ezekiel bread, it came off. It didn't. I had to scrape the pan. I don't have good loaf pans, I realize, so you shouldn't have a problem with that. The good thing about Ezekiel bread is you can freeze it. If you just leave it in the fridge, it will only last a week. But yeah, enjoy it. It's like a full meal, and you'll be really satisfied with this bread. All right, thanks for watching, and have a blessed day in the Lord.